They are sisters. And we'll be giving a speech from the Competent Communication Menu Project number 8, Get Comfortable with Visual Aid. The title of this speech is, Oh, the Women in Our Family. Welcome.
Thank you, Nhie. Good afternoon, friends and fellow Toastmasters. One of the things about our family is that we are a very interesting bunch of women. We've been fortunate to have in our lives grandmothers, aunts, cousins, a terrific mother and sister, sisters-in-laws, nieces, daughters, and granddaughters. Alcohol is also a resounding theme in our lives, and we hope you'll find some humor in the stories that we are about to share. I'll ask Kelly to start us off by talking a little bit about our grandmothers.
Our dad's mom, Claire, and our mom's mom, Liara, are two very extraordinary but very different individuals. We liken them to cocktails, so Grandma Liara would be a Shirley Temple. She's very sweet and very smiley. And Grandma Claire, well, should be a double shot of Johnny Walker. Goes down smooth, but packs a punch. Our Grandma Liara lived to be 96 years old, and she is a grandma that is straight out of How to Be a Terrific Grandma handbook. She made the most incredible breakfast. She would have bacon, side pork, sausage, fried eggs, homemade bread, homemade jelly, creamed potatoes, everything you can imagine, and it was all delicious. She would cook for 20 people at the same time without spilling the salt shaker, and we all loved to gather around the table. She also was a great baker and made pies, cookies, and anise candy. She gardened and she loved to visit with people. Kristi used to sit next to her on the couch because my grandmother would tickle her arm and rub her back.
I really like that part.
She was a touchy-feely grandma, and you always knew that you were loved. Our Grandma Claire lived in California, which is where we grew up. She lived about an hour north of San Francisco, which was still earthquake country. She liked her highballs and her Chesterfield cigarettes. She had a terrific tree out front that my brother used to like to climb, and we secretly wished that he would get stuck in that tree, but it never came to be. Inside the house where our dad grew up, she had both a piano and an organ, and we thought it was really cool when we got our chance to play on that. We have very fond memories of laying on the living room floor playing Yahtzee and word games and just hoping for a little earthquake would come through because it would tickle your tummy. I don't believe she ever baked anything, but that was okay because across the street from my grandmother's house was a store, and we could go over there and get all the ho-hos and fruit pies that we wanted. Her specialty was tuna fish with sweet relish and barbecued potato chips. And best of all, she had a pair of pink plastic flamingos in her backyard. I think they were from the 1950s. I inherited them when she passed away, and they are still very cool. While she wasn't a touchy-feely grandmother, we always knew that she loved us.
Two other women who have been very influential in our lives are our mom, Betty, in the blue shirt, and her sister, Bonnie, in the upper corner. If we compared them to drinks, Mom would be a margarita, and Bonnie would be a Bloody Mary, a nice kick in the morning, and all vegetable-y. In their younger years, we believe they were probably very different from one another. Bonnie, we imagine as the oldest, was the responsible one. She married young, moved from Minnesota to California, and then back to Minnesota with 5 kids in tow. Her husband was a truck driver, so she was probably a single mom most days. In contrast, our mom was a bit of a wild thing, fun-loving and adventurous. She remained in California once her family moved to the Bay Area when she was in 10th grade. And in the years after high school, she could be found in San Francisco waiting for the sailors to come in. Lucky for us, she settled down and had 4 kids, a son and 3 daughters, 2 of whom are the most wonderful daughters anyone could ask for. Now our mom and her sister are in their late 70s, and they're more alike than ever. For one thing, they're two of the gassiest sisters you're ever going to meet. They both married husbands they'd rather... Oh, sorry, your turn.
Also, neither of them are very classy, nor do they pretend to be, especially when it comes to sneezing. Now, you women in the audience probably will appreciate this more than the men, but when it comes to sneezing and bladder control, that can be a challenge. How many women do you know when they're out in public and sneeze, they make a point to cross their legs? Also, a very typical mom thing to do is she flatters herself on being a bargain shopper. For my birthday, and my birthday's the end of March, she bought me Christmas pajamas with flamingos on them. I'm sure she got them on sale after Christmas. But what was different about this is she actually wore them a few times before re-gifting them to me. You gotta love her sense of thriftiness.
My mom and aunt both married husbands they'd rather murder and bury in the backyard. We have a theory about that. When you're first married, you're starting out, you're quite busy, you raise your kids. But then the kids grow up, they move out of the house, and now you find yourself in retirement. And you think that would be a great thing. And for some it is. But for some men, they simply don't stay busy enough. It's like their backsides meet up with the couch cushions and they form an inseparable relationship. As long as it's not too far to the kitchen, they can survive for years and years, just a pair of butt cheeks on the couch. Our mom and aunt keep busy, reaching out, helping others, and they simply don't understand how watching hours of NASCAR and fishing shows is truly living. They both love their children and grandchildren and their great-grandchildren more than anything else in the world. As far as moms go, let's say they're just that kind that let their kids play on the piano with peanut butter fingers, wearing nothing but a t-shirt. They aren't perfect, no one is, not even moms, and that's a tough reality. But they come pretty darn close. So Kelly, should we talk about our sister Janelle?
Of course, how can we not?
Okay, then I'll let you start.
Our youngest sibling, Janelle, has a very kinetic personality. She is the baby of our family and is so much fun to make fun of. It has nothing to do with the fact that she lives in California and has no idea that we talk about her often in our speeches. Toastmasters has taught us that we should always start with a positive. So let's see.
There's got to be something.
Well, she's blonde. She's pretty. She's college educated. She has 2 terrific kids. We're not really sure how that happened. She's artistic, and she has inherited some of our mom's zest for life and our grandma Claire's zest for the spirits. If Janelle were a cocktail, she'd be a Cosmo. Kind of flirty, otherworldly, and always up for a party. She has a terrific sense of humor and an even more terrific sense of herself. In college, Janelle was the coxswain on her crew team. She was the person who sat at the front of the boat and just barked orders while the rest of the people actually put energy into rowing. It's amazing, but that's still how she lives her life today. After the birth of her daughter, she chose to be a stay-at-home mom. 20 years later, she decided it was time to go back to work. But just part-time and not during the summer because she needs her summers off. Now that her kids are out of the house, we ask her, what do you do during your free time? Because you seem to have a lot of it. And we're pretty sure that her response was vodka. Though we poke fun of her, we love her to death and wish that we could be with her more often.
One of the things we admire about our relationship as sisters is our bluntness. My daughters have watched my sisters and I interact all of their lives, and they've adopted that frankness and brutal honesty. Like other women in our lives, my daughters are very individualistic. My 27-year-old Katrina is messy, strong-willed, and like a hurricane, just like her name implies. Her cocktail would be a dirty martini. My 25-year-old Lainey is creative but fragile, like a tequila sunrise. And the youngest, Isabel, is 19, and I pretend she's too young to have a cocktail counterpart. It's been fascinating watching them grow, toggling between hating each other and loving each other. I have complete confidence that they will land on love.
I have a stepdaughter who is artistic and free-spirited. Her name is Cassie. Her drink counterpart would be a kamikaze, very colorful and a little bit of everything, all mixed together. Our daughters, and now granddaughters, we have 3 between the 2 of us, are the new generation of women in our family. We will share with them this simple advice. After 3 drinks, you are no longer a lady.
That's an important teaching point. As is, not everyone reads from the same textbook. Respect those differences. Even if you don't get homemade cookies, know that you are loved. Anticipate little earthquakes, they just fall. And it's okay to think of yourself, but your sisters might talk about you in their speeches. And most of all, be able to laugh at yourself. If you don't, everyone else will. Cheers.
Celebrated her first year with Toastmasters. Wow. Today, she's here to speak on the subject of sex trafficking with CC speech number 6, Vocal Variety. The title of her speech is Sex Trafficking in Minnesota.
Thank you, Master Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. I don't know if we have any more, but honored anyway. I want to begin with a fact. Human trafficking is the second most profitable criminal industry in the world, right after the drug trade. Now this includes the buying and selling of people for labor and for sex. We tend to think sex trafficking is a problem that other countries have to deal with, or that if it's here in the US, it's only in big cities on the East and West Coasts. Well, in 2009, the FBI published a report which listed the Twin Cities as the 13th worst US city for high sex trafficking rates. So the problem is here. It's in Minnesota. And if it's in the Twin Cities, you can bet it's here in Rochester as well. But I think a lot of the time we're blind to this. Now, 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to attend a community education program sponsored by Mission 21, which is a Rochester nonprofit organization that specializes in educating people about the sex trafficking problem we have here in Minnesota. And the things I learned in this program shocked me. But they shocked me in a good way, because it woke me up to the reality of what's happening here in my own state. And if we're going to do something about Minnesota's sex trafficking problem, more people need to be woken up the way I was to the realities of sex trafficking. Now, as I said before, Mission 21 is a Rochester nonprofit organization, and they work to fight sex trafficking, specifically in Rochester, but across Minnesota. But the ways in which they have to do this provide perfect examples for why sex trafficking is not only able to exist in Minnesota, but actually flourishes here. Now, the first thing and the primary thing that Mission 21 does is they educate. They have programs that go into schools, churches, hospitals, workplaces, wherever they can go, where they can educate people about sex trafficking, who's involved, who's involved, what's happening, and how it's going to impact people in their day-to-day lives. I want to share with you some more facts, and these are from research published in 2010 by the Shapiro Group. They're a consulting agency from Atlanta, Georgia, and in 2010 they were here in Minnesota doing research for the Women's Foundation in Minnesota on our sex trafficking rates. Here's some of the things that they found. First, the average age at which a girl will enter the sex trafficking industry in Minnesota is 12 to 14. Second, on an average Minnesota weekend night, 45 girls will be bought and sold for sex, a total of 132 times. And third, the vast majority of these girls will be bought and sold through online ads and advertisements that are difficult to track and difficult to shut down. These kind of facts, the Mission 21 tries to make sure people know, because if more people knew that this was the extent of what was happening here, they would be more aware, and it would be so much harder for traffickers to get away with what they're doing. Now, the second thing that Mission 21 does is they provide protection for victims of trafficking. If a girl has been rescued from a trafficking situation here in Rochester, Mission 21 can give her a safe place to stay for one night. They can give her food, clothing, and contact information for other nonprofit organizations that can help her get her life back going and back on her feet. That's all that Mission 21 can do. Because of the laws regarding who can have custody of a sexually exploited minor, as many of these rescued girls are, Mission 21 has to give these girls up after one night to a family, to a foster home, or another care organization that's not necessarily going to be equipped to help these girls deal with the problems that they have post-trafficking. Sometimes the family is the reason they went to trafficking in the first place, because there was no support system in the home, and foster homes just don't have the time and the bandwidth to give these girls the time and attention that they need to recover from what they've just been through. So Mission 21 is forced to sit back and give these girls over to a group of people that they know are not going to be able to help them the way they need to be helped. And then they have to watch them go right back into trafficking again. And after you've rescued a girl once, it's so much harder to find and rescue her a second time. That's why the third thing that Mission 21 does is lobby. They lobby at the state, local, and national levels in cooperation with organizations like Shared Hope International and the Women's Foundation of Minnesota for new laws that will change the way victims of trafficking are recognized in our current legal system. Prostitution is legal in Minnesota. So what used to happen is if a girl was found in a trafficking situation, she would be charged and arrested for prostitution. And that doesn't help her. Now it's because of lobbying by Mission 21 and these other organizations that we now have the Safe Harbor Act that was passed in 2011. And what this act does is it recognizes victims of trafficking as victims and requires that they be treated as such. And that's good. But that's only half the problem, because there's still the sellers and, more importantly, the buyers that you need to deal with. Now the law comes down pretty hard on someone who's selling girls, someone who's trafficking them. But here's what happens in Minnesota. If you hire a girl as a prostitute, if she's younger than 13 years old, the maximum sentence is 20 years or $40,000. If she's between the ages of 13 and 15, it'll be 10 years, $20,000. If she's 16 or 17 years old, it's 5 years, $10,000. And if she's 18 or older, if she's an adult, then it's $1,500, or community service. Now we need to think about that. Let's say the girl is 16 or 17. She's still a minor. She should still be under the protection of the law. But if someone hires her out as a prostitute, if she's being trafficked, the maximum sentence they will get is 5 years or $10,000. Now $10,000, that's equal to the price of a good car. My car costs $5,000, so maybe 2 halfway decent cars. And as a state, we need to think about that. Because if we're valuing the life of an individual equal to the price of 2 cars, 2 halfway decent cars, then what does that say about how much we value that individual in the first place? Now I stand behind Mission 21. I believe in what they're doing, and I believe we need to see more organizations like this if we're going to do something about the sex trafficking problem that we have here in Minnesota. And I believe that that starts with more people waking up and realizing in reality what's happening under our noses in our own communities, in our state. Master Toastmaster.
It's just a basketball. Come on, Dad.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters, and if we have any honored guests, I want to ask you all a question. You don't need to answer this out loud, but I want you to think really critically about the answer in your mind. What is this? No, it's not a trick question. It really is just a basketball. You can tell by the shape, the size, the color, the texture. All your previous experiences with this object tell you this is a basketball. But what if I asked you, what does this basketball mean? Most of you would probably say that basketball means absolutely nothing to me. But you might find someone who says, wow, that basketball looks a lot like my childhood because of all the times I spent playing basketball with my dad. You might find someone who says, wow, that basketball looks a lot like the reason my husband ignores me because he can't take his eyes off the basketball game. The only difference in these responses come from our personal experiences and how they shape what one simple object means. I think Penelope Fitzgerald said it best when she said, "No two people see the external world in exactly the same way. To every separate person, a thing is how he sees it." In other words, your own perception is your own reality. Now, most of us don't have any negative views of a basketball. A basketball really is just a basketball. But how do our perceptions shape other parts of our lives? Think about relationships. Do you view relationships through a positive or a negative lens? I once heard a story of a woman talking about date night with her husband. She said to her coworkers, "It was amazing. He came home from work and took me out for the most romantic dinner. After dinner, we went for an hour-long walk in the moonlight. When we got home, I noticed he had placed candles throughout the entire house. And the best part, we crawled into bed and talked for 2 hours until we slowly drifted to sleep." At the same time, her husband was talking about date night. He said, "It was awful. Our electricity went out, so I came home and we had to go out for dinner. The dinner was so expensive, I couldn't afford a cab, and we were forced to walk home. Being that we didn't have electricity, we had to see everything through candlelight. And the worst part, we crawled into bed and I couldn't sleep because my wife was jabbering in my ear for 2 hours. Your own perception is your own reality. The way you see the world attracts what reinforces that view." This is a little bit wordy, so try to stay with me. The way you see the world attracts what reinforces that view. If you view many situations through a negative lens, the beauty in all this is you have the ability to change your perception, and therefore you can change your reality. Start by taking control of your mind. Make a conscious effort to see the beauty in the world, and you're going to attract what reinforces beauty. Be aware of patterns and how you react to certain situations. But most importantly, use yourself as a breeding ground for positivity. And I promise your life will change right before your eyes. Now, I'm not someone up here trying to tell you, you need to see rainbows and butterflies every time you look at this basketball. But there will be times in our lives where we will have negative experiences with things, and we need to change the way we perceive them. I want to encourage all of you to look at the world like it's a place full of miracles. And if you like John Bon Jovi, you're going to like my favorite quote pertaining to this. Miracles happen every single day. Change your perception of what a miracle is, and you'll see them all around you. Mr. Toastmaster.
Icebreaker.
Life overall. And of course, I have some hidden agenda that I'll reveal at the end. If I were to ask what's more important, quality or quantity, I pretty much would assume that everybody say, oh, quality is more important. Don't be absurd. But if you think about it, quantity gets favored so much. Think about it when we buy a home. We look at the square footage quite a bit when we make that decision. When we find out what's important, when we make the determination, should we visit this home or not? We look at everything else in such detail. Usually there's some aspect of quantity that sneaks in. If we think about in the wrong context, how many people are following you on some social media platform? At times we get tempted to start comparing, and it means that quantity is snuck in one more time. When you think about food, sometimes you're looking at quantity, not quality. We'll talk about that in a bit. How about the amount of money that we make? It sounds absurd to say, how's your job going? Or somebody to ask you, how's your job going? And you say, I hate it, but I'm making a lot of money. It sounds terrible, but so many people are actually doing it, myself included. Quantity has really snuck in too much. It's taken over our lives in certain areas. But every now and then, I think somebody has to make the public service announcement to remind, for myself included, that quality matters more. And that's the simple message of this talk. Let's think about something really simple. Food. We had a great talk on juicing. You think about putting all these vegetables and fruits, and nutrients in just a glass. And if you thought about that, I think about it and say, well, what else am I going to do to stuff? I'll get so hungry. I need a big, huge steak or something like that to satisfy. But it contains everything that you need. What else is needed? If we were just looking at quantity and not quality, probably about an hour we'll all be at McDonald's down the road. And I might be there too if I don't come to my senses. It doesn't take much to satisfy what we need to burn and to live in terms of food. It's quality that matters. How about in our professions? I just mentioned this terrible idea that we work for money, and that one job is better than the other job because it pays more. But what about the bucket that's filling, satisfying in purpose? At my home club this morning, there was this question that was thrown out to all members of the audience. And the question was, if happiness was the currency, if that was the national currency, what job, what activity would make you the richest person on earth? In other words, what would be the thing that you spend your time on that made you happy? Not a one of us said, oh, it's my current job. Think about that. So why didn't we pursue being a teacher or doing something else that satisfied and filled the bucket? Now, there might be some that are actually in this audience that say, no, I'm absolutely doing what I want. And I would argue you're the exception. You've done well. You've played the game quite well. But for many, we've fallen into the quantity over quality issue. That's just the profession. We only have so much time on this earth. We have to choose how we spend it. Where we spend it in our work or our profession, that's one thing, but what about relationships? I've seen and heard about these people who have thousands and thousands of followers or friends on Facebook. How many friends do you really need to have a good life? I don't know how many I have on Facebook. If you were to ask me, I think I probably need about 5 good friends. That's it. And actually, the most important stuff is with the one. It's the partner. The one that you have partner with you through the rest of life. That's what matters the most. And can you spare just 15 minutes a day? No cell phones, no TV, no nothing. No noise. And you can just spend 15 minutes with that person. That's quality time that's pretty rare. And yet time is all we have. Why can't we spend that with the most important person? There's a number, I think it's called Dunbar's number. It says that you can only really handle 150 people in your life, total. I think it's 100 to 250, but they put it right middle-ish, about 150. Most of us probably have more than that in social media right now. You can only handle so much. It's the quality of those few relationships that matter. And now for the hidden agenda that has to come out. What about in Toastmasters? We're all here, we're all part of this great organization. How many times have we, or have you seen it done, where we race through a speech, we race through a manual, we race to get members into our club? We're not really focused as much as we should be on the members that we have, or that single speech project that we're on, in terms of focusing on in terms of our growth. Isaiah mentioned quite right, correctly, we're an educational institution, and we can graduate a lot of people really quick, just like the other institutions. How many, is that really the right thing to do? Should we not be perhaps slowing it down a little bit? Focusing less on achievement in terms of finishing things, achieving recognition with the Distinguished Club program, as fine as it is, but instead focusing on each member that we have. There's a little bit of a trap that we kind of fall into when we get into the achievement mindset. Without going much further in time, I just want to echo this idea of quality. Quality will add more members to your club. It will result in more members because you focus on what you have and on what we have. When we grow each member, the membership problem kind of takes care of itself with adequate promotion. So let's not race through life. Let's not work in jobs that don't really fill the bucket or eat poor food. And let's also take our time and focus on quality in terms of our own development and on the development of our fellow members. Mr. Toastmaster.
I do not like broccoli. Fellow Toastmasters and most honored guests, is it really important to you if I'm honest about not liking broccoli? Or is it even important at all that I don't like broccoli? What about potatoes? Did any of you see me at Applebee's hovering over this big bucket of mashed potatoes? Did you see a hint of truthfulness on my lips? I believe that the adverbial adjunct to be honest, or to be perfectly honest, is overused. Overused as much as, is used by about everybody except for those of you in front of me. Why not just say, to be blunt, I don't like broccoli? I'll put it to you straight. I don't like broccoli. Aha! And why should I make it an ethical statement? Why should I have it as a statement that I honestly don't like broccoli? Does it really add anything to the argument? Now there's times that to say honest might even be harsh. What about that great Southern gentleman, Rhett Butler? Rhett Butler, when he was trying to quickly slip out the back door, and Scarlett was coming running down the central staircase. Oh, Brett, whatever shall I do? How can I go on without you? Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. The only thing is, the other part of that statement you might not have known about or ever heard about. He saved his most stinging, injurious comment for the second part, when he commented on her cooking. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. And to be perfectly honest, I abhor your cooking. especially your hominy grits. Now, most of you don't remember that because that movie was exceedingly long and that line did get cut. And this isn't new. This isn't new in our culture. It goes way back. It goes way back to one of my heroes, Abraham Lincoln. Honest Abe. He loved the tall tales. He loved to spin the yarns. And he split the truth more often than he split reels. Oh, yes. I think that sometimes I can be accused of being too literal, of taking things too literal. But the situation is this. A few months ago, my friend is helping me prepare my taxes. We'd been at it for about a half hour. And then he leans back in his chair and he says, well, to be perfectly honest, wait a minute. What just transposed minutes ago? Didn't you tell me that it was okay to move a zero or leave one off here and there and it wouldn't matter? And now you want to be perfectly honest about, well, the rest of the statement. Well, to be perfectly honest, I don't really like broccoli either, and I'd rather not have it for dinner. Well, maybe it's because I really feel that the word honesty should be kept for the right occasions. For example, when I like to think that I'm living vicariously through the words of Olivia Newton-John, an object of affection is actually me. And she says, I honestly love you. I honestly love you. And it comes from my heart and not my head. Ah, yes. I love broccoli. To be honest, I really love broccoli. To put it straightforward, I do love broccoli. I'm hopelessly devoted to broccoli. Mr. Toastmaster.
Make him eat the whole bag.